Yeah, my name is Detlef Koschny, and I'm the head of the Near Earth Object segment of the European Space Agency.
Okay. And so we're here at the 2013 Planetary Defense Conference, and I was hoping maybe you could start by just describing what uh, you and your agency is bringing to the conference here, what you're contributing to the discussion here.
Well, the European Space Agency has started a space situational awareness program about 4 years ago. And part of that is the topic of near Earth asteroids or near Earth objects in general. And what we do here is we learn what other people are doing and we show what we've been doing on our side.
And is the ESA Space Situational Awareness, is that a relatively new program?
Yeah, our Space Situational Awareness Program was only started in January 2009, and in what we call the preparatory phase, which ended end of last year, end of 2012, and now we continue in the operational phase, you could say. It encompasses three elements. That's the space weather as the most important one, near-Earth objects, but also space debris, so man-made objects.
Okay. Well, maybe we could just go through each one of those and you could describe what you guys are doing to further our understanding of each one of those three aspects. So maybe because we're at the Planetary Defense Conference, everyone's talking about asteroids and comets.
Yeah.
Maybe you could start by describing what you guys are doing with the concern over asteroids and comets.
Right. Okay. Well, we all know that in the meantime, at least after Chelyabinsk, we know that asteroids can come very close to the Earth. They can enter the atmosphere. And in Europe, we had a number of activities already, built up over the last 10, 15 years, like a warning system called NEODICE, which computes orbits of asteroids, predicts them in the future, and makes predictions when they come close. That was a scientific service. It was more to tell the scientist, okay, look, these objects you better look at again to make sure that they don't really threaten this planet. We are now taking it to the next level, also a bit more to the political level. So we organize all the activities in Europe, we coordinate them, we make sure they're properly funded. We provide a centralized web portal via our ESA web pages. We add observational assets, we have telescopes, and the most important thing right now for the future, we have started developing a prototype telescope with a really wide field of view, which will let us discover these objects early.
So some of it is bringing what used to be a less formal, less official activity into a more official program to ensure it gets the funding and capabilities it needs. Is that correct?
That's a good way of phrasing it, yeah. I mean, previously there were activities typically driven by individuals from universities. Now, if a professor retires from a university, most of the time the work that he does stops, right? Now, of course, for such an important system like finding out which objects come close to our planet in the next 100 years, you don't just want that service to stop when the professor retires.
Right.
That's where we come in. That's where we build up now a system where we make sure this doesn't happen.
Can you maybe describe this new telescope system you guys are promoting and trying to develop?
Yeah, it's an idea which we call fly eye telescope. So it's like the fly has an eye which has different optical elements. It's similar to that. So it's envisage a normal telescope with a large main mirror, about 1 meter in diameter. And then you split the image up in 16 small images, and then you have 16 small optical paths that should be easy to manufacture, 16 small CCD cameras where you can evaluate the data. And with that way, we want to have a telescope with 1 meter effective aperture, so collecting enough light to see these objects, and a very large field of view, 80 times larger than the full moon in the sky.
Wow. And this is a space-based telescope.
This is a ground-based
okay.
telescope. This is not a space-based telescope. Space-based would be better, but it would also cost 20 to 50 times more than this ground-based telescope.
And what do you think this will do to improve our observation of these asteroids? Because there's a lot of discussion here about the array of challenges. The larger ones are easier to see. The smaller ones are more difficult to see. And there's, it seems like it's going to be a big challenge to find all of the potentially threatening objects across the whole size range. The one that hit over Russia was much smaller than what we've been looking for. And it seems like this is a program where we really need to pool the capabilities of all types of nations and different capacities that exist. How do you see this new telescope contributing to that process?
The existing surveys, the large surveys like Catalina, Pan-STARRS, and so forth, they're mainly U.S. funded. They focus on objects which are far away and are faint. We want to do a bit something different, something complementary to that. We aim at surveying the complete sky once per night. Like Catalina, Pan-STARRS, they take a number of weeks for that, months maybe, to cover the complete night sky. If you do that in once per night, you are sure that you don't miss any object. So our goal is not to detect a certain size range. Our goal is to detect all objects which come closer than, say, 3 weeks ahead. So we want to have 3 weeks warning time for objects Tunguska-sized or larger, meaning 40 meters in size or larger. We will not discover all of these objects. We will only see those which are really close to the Earth.
Right.
That's our goal.
Right. But you're trying to work in coordination with the other programs to make sure the different aspects of the challenge are being covered.
Definitely. I mean, this is a very international process. It cannot be done by a country or even by Europe in isolation. You know, we now have funding to develop one such telescope. We'd really need 4 to do our job properly. Well, then we team up with other people, with other surveys. The ATLAS system in the US is similar with smaller telescopes. So why not pool resources and share the task?
Okay, so this would be focused more on giving a more last minute, so to speak, warning time, so we don't, because the one that came over Russia, most people know there was no warning time. We didn't even know it was coming until the first cab driver with the camera in his dashboard saw it.
Yeah, those objects will always be difficult. I mean, the Chelyabinsk event, the object came basically directly from the sun.
Right.
And at this conference, Paul Chodas told us that even on previous flybys, it never really came very close, so we would not have picked it up on previous flybys either. For those objects, you would really need a space-based telescope. Now, is that worth the money? Okay, we're still studying that. I mean, Chelyabinsk, in the end, it did damage, but nobody really got killed or anything. So it's the question, how much money is it worth to invest in finding these kind of objects?
So is there anything else that the Space Situational Awareness group is going to be doing specifically on the asteroid planetary defense work?
We have 2 other areas where we are right now very active. One is the political scene. We are contributing to the discussions on the United Nations level, where we have agreed and presented in February to COPUOS, to the Committee of Peaceful Use of Outer Space, a concept on how to react to a possible imminent impact threat. That involves a number of working groups and activities that we are now helping to set up. And the second important contribution is paperwork, study work on mitigation missions. So if really we see an object of 100 meter size or 150, it's the only natural disaster where we can actually do something against as humankind.
Right.
You need to launch a satellite and try to deflect that. So there we do studies. We started that already 10 years ago with the Don Quixote study to show that if you just impact an asteroid, no explosives, you just hit it like in a car accident, you can move it away. And that's work that we are continuing. Also there on international level with cooperation with the US, for example.
So is the NEOShield program, is that within your jurisdiction?
The NEOShield program is parallel to the ESA program, so that's fantastic. We have 2 funding sources to do complementary things. NEOShield is funded from the European Commission. Now, the European Space Agency is not part of the European Commission. We're separate. Not historical reasons, we were first. And the good news is that they also have a large amount of money, reasonably large, and we coordinate so that we make sure that we don't spend the money on the same things. They focus even more on these mitigation activities, but mainly they work on the science, ground truth work, like experiments in the lab on impacts, things like that. We don't do that. We work more on the service side of the whole activity.
Okay. And then the next issue that you said the Space Situational Awareness group is looking at is space debris, which seems like it's becoming an increasing problem where you have even small objects can do a lot of damage a satellite, take out a satellite. So what work are you guys doing to try and tackle this challenge?
Yeah, it's very similar to what we do on near-Earth objects. There are many groups in Europe that have been working on this topic before. Even within ESA, we already, since many years, have a so-called space debris office. What we now do is, again, we make sure that we federate all the existing systems, bring them together, and there's a lot of political work to be done, agreeing on treaties that you don't shoot a satellite on purpose and then you have a cloud of debris. So that's something where we continue work that we've been active in for the last 10, 15 years already.
And is there any discussion about what we might be able to do to start to remove some of this debris, to maybe start to clear out some of the region?
Yeah, there is, in particular in Germany, they are doing a very detailed study, which is very close also to being actually implemented then, to actually go to low Earth orbit objects, dock with them, and then try to, on purpose, bring them down into the atmosphere, where they then basically, ablate and break apart without doing any damage.
So that's something that we could be seeing coming online relatively soon?
Yeah, and this is a national program. ESA is involved in that, but it's driven by Germany. And if they do, I think now a phase A2 study, so it's still theoretical, but the next steps are planned. And if they get the funding, they could actually fly something like that within the next 2 or 3 years.
So it would be something that would go and dock with, say, a dysfunctional satellite and bring it in, for example?
Yeah, the details I don't really know, I have to admit, because it's the other part, so it's not with asteroids. But as far as I remember, I saw something, they would actually somehow grab a non-cooperative object up there and then move it to a low Earth orbit, where it then would be slowed down by the atmospheric friction and then basically blow up in the atmosphere without doing any damage.
And then the third subject of study is the space weather. And it's becoming an increasing area of study, realizing that the activity of the sun has potentially all kinds of effects on not only on our satellites, but on potentially the electrical infrastructure here on Earth, for example. So can you elaborate what is going on in regard to this?
Yeah, we see more and more that the more delicate and sensitive electronics equipment you get, the more sensitive you get to what we call space weather. So what that is imagine you have an eruption on the sun, then there's a particle stream coming from the sun which interacts with our magnetic field, and it can change the behavior of the ionosphere. That means that if you, for example, have a GPS receiver, that signal may be garbled and you get a low resolution in your signal. You don't want that to happen when you're in an airplane and just about to land, because that is controlled by GPS. So we need to make sure we understand the problem, and what we are doing right now in ESA is that we set up also a centralized information service. That's the first thing. There are many different groups that work on this topic. But for also a spacecraft operator, it's very hard to find information. Well, where is there a prediction service somewhere? So far that wasn't there, and that's exactly what we're building up.
So basically, like you have your weather forecast in your newspaper. Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? Is it going to be hot? We're going to need to develop a similar idea for the solar system. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in order to do that, you need to distribute the information. But of course, at first you need to get the information. That means sensors up there in space. We use, for example, our Proba 2 spacecraft, which was developed as a technology demonstrator. It has a telescope that looks at the sun, and we took that over into the SSA program and now use it to basically say, oh, there was an outburst, an eruption on the sun, and then we distribute that information to a user list that wants to learn about these things. And then they have, say, a 1 hour ahead warning, something may happen.
And is there any proposals to expand some of the infrastructure in space to monitor these things?
We have a number of plans. So we have funding to build up the space infrastructure, and we're currently still finding out what really is the most cost-effective way of doing this. We talk about what we call hosted payloads. So a simple thing is just a radiation monitor up there in space that measures the radiation that comes from the sun. That's a box of 2 kilograms. You can mount it on any spacecraft where you have power and where you can downlink downlink the data. So we're currently trying to identify satellites, say commercial communication satellites, which would carry one of these sensors. That's the kind of work we're doing.
And I assume you guys are collaborating with NASA and other agencies who are doing other aspects of monitoring the sun and space weather.
Indeed, the space weather area is like with the asteroid field, is a very international thing. And with just one sensor, you cannot do very much. But if you have a set of 3 or 4, you multiply the output. It's not just 3 or 4 times more, it's much more. So there it's also important to work together, and that's what we're doing.
Maybe just, even for a second, just outside of funding considerations, because obviously there's a lot of challenges to getting funding for a lot of things right now. Is there anything that you think would be a big revolutionary step in expanding our capability that we haven't yet done? Any specific types of telescopes or missions that would be a big boost to increase our forecasting capability for space weather?
I cannot judge for the space weather. Again, I'm the asteroid expert here, so there, unfortunately, I think what I hear from them is more observational capabilities of the sun, more radiation sensors. We have them, and they're there. The technology is there, but there are not enough of them because you need a 3D image of the situation in space, which right now is difficult to get. But I would suggest that to check with the real expert.
Sure, okay. Because I've seen, I think in the U.S., the National Research Council put out a report on if there was a very big ejection from the sun, it could even cause large currents to be induced on the ground and in the atmosphere, which could even potentially blow out electrical systems. I think something happened in Canada in 1989. They've had larger events passed in the 1800s where you had telegraph lines being charged, the telegraph stations being caught on fire, all because of basically an electromagnetic pulse created by solar activity. So it seems like this is an important area to increase our forecasting so we can know when these types of things might be happening, and we can take the adequate preparatory measures here on Earth to protect our not only space-based assets, but our ground-based infrastructure too.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, this doesn't just affect space, or what I gave as an example, the ionosphere, can really go down all the way to the ground. Pipelines are sensitive. There's long metallic areas, and you can very easily introduce currents there. So yeah, it has a lot of effects on our infrastructure.
Basically, a lot of these pipelines and power lines can become basically antennas for these types of things, right?
Yeah, genau. Yeah, that's the way it is. Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to maybe the last question, which is the three areas you discussed: the planetary defense, space debris, space weather, and a lot of what was being discussed at this conference. It seems to more and more make the point that while most people think about just living here on Earth and this being our home here on Earth, it really makes a point that we have to think about the Earth from the standpoint of the solar system as a whole. What's going on the sun, what's going on in our near-Earth environment, what's going on in orbit. All these activities are more and more affecting and potentially affecting our day-to-day lives, and it seems like it's really pushing a new frontier for mankind where we have to start thinking about mankind as a part of the solar system, not just isolated here on Earth.
I think that's a good way of describing it. We have known that we are in a solar system for many, many hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years. We know that the sun is very important, but really the intimate connection between space out there and our assets here on ground, that's only coming up now. It's a new sense of awareness, and I guess that's why the program is also called Space Situational Awareness.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like some exciting frontiers for us and future generations to continue to expand mankind's capability here on Earth and in the solar system.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.